Welcome to Ariel's vlog. I'm Ariel, and I'm experimenting with a new intro because I think I need an intro. Just something for me to have a starting point, like every time I sit down to do one of these. Whatever. I'll work on it. Um, so this morning I was thinking, uh, have you heard of artificial intelligence? It's a joke because I'm pretty sure everybody's heard of artificial intelligence. Even if you're not aware of what's going on currently or particularly up to date, you probably have heard of artificial intelligence. Anyway, you might not know that AI is one of the most controversial issues in the writing community ever. Um, Probably as controversial as indie publishing, more controversial than indie publishing, as controversial as, I don't know, paperbacks. And every time there's been a new push forward in terms of technology, and AI has been particularly divisive. And I have a sort of a nuanced look on AI. I think it's complicated. I think that a lot of people are sort of applying black and white opinions and feelings to AI when it's just a really nuanced and complex issue. And it isn't just a straightforward yes or no. I think AI as a whole has been integrated into our lives in ways that we can't even fathom already. And so there's really no way to avoid it and to say, I refuse um, all forms of AI without actually being a hypocrite because you just can't. Like it's just everywhere. Like I'm using AI right now to, record and upload, and social media is based on AI and whatever. All of that stuff doesn't really matter. What I was thinking about though was I was feeling a little sad this morning because this particular issue has done something in the writing community that I've never really experienced. And I know other issues like the onset of indie publishing had caused issues like this in the past, but the divisiveness of it is really intense. Like so for example, a writer person who I know, and this has been happening all over, so I'm not like pinpointing any one particular person, but a writer person I know just this morning posted something about how they were anti AI and wouldn't be using certain Amazon services because Amazon is an AI based company, which they have been for a very long time. And I've seen a bunch of people saying these things. They like, there's like these like anti-AI warriors who go around outing authors who use AI in any sort of context as a way of trying to get them canceled. And um, there's like these groups that are just like rabidly anti-AI, like Facebook groups, and it's really stressful um, because a lot of the arguments don't really make sense. They're very sort of emotional based. I talked in a previous blog about um, emotionally targeted rhetoric, or rhetoric that is explicitly written and created to make you feel things, right? And AI is a really good example of where this is happening. You see phrases like theft being thrown around, and artists are being stolen from, and copyright violations and piracy, and there's all of these different terms. But the truth is, the law is not designed to deal with this, for starters, so we don't really have any sort of formal foundation to build moral opinions off of for when it comes to AI. And not only that, but none of us have ever experienced AI in our lives, right? Like, I mean, we've experienced it sort of in a minor way, like, Google Maps, right? That's an AI based platform. We've started to use AI. Smart TVs, they have AI in them. But the things that have AI in them previously, prior to say like 2021 or 2022, are companies were building AI into software. It wasn't a choice that we as individuals made. And now there are AI based tools that we can choose to use, right? Like ChatGPT or Midjourney or Stable Diffusion or any of the numerous tools that exist to help with writing or coding or design or whatever. And so people are getting really upset about it. And they're applying a sort of moral, ethical code to this thing that hardly anybody even really understands. I mean, I have studied AI. Like I've read a bunch of books on AI, and I have like a really long reading list that I'm working my way through. I've read a lot of articles and blog posts. I've talked to people who are engineers and computer scientists and who have used it. I've paid attention to the writing community conversations that people are having. I've listened to Joanna Penn's podcast where she talks about AI. And honestly, I consider myself to be a pretty intelligent person, and it is so complicated. It's so hard to understand that taking and applying these just sort of blanket moral judgments to AI as a whole, and then by association, people who are using AI, is really hard for me, like to wrap my mind about around how this is A, logical, B, reasonable, and C, useful or helpful. So what happens is I don't personally care if somebody doesn't want to use AI or doesn't like it. It's fine with me. I get it. New things are scary. And, there's a big learning curve when it comes to a lot of the stuff, and people don't like it or they feel uncomfortable with it and they don't want to use it. I don't have an issue with that. But it doesn't really seem like it works the same in the other direction. The people who are anti-AI are like vehemently anti-AI, and they will blanket their moral judgments across anybody who participates or anybody who is not like 100% anti-AI. So there's parts of AI that bother me. Like I think we need regulation, I think we need rules, I think we need accountability. I think we need transparency at a corporate level. I mean, but I've thought we've needed all of that for a really long time. And AI is just sort of illuminating the problem in just kind of this like really intense way. But I don't think AI is inherently bad. I don't think it's theft. It's frustrating for me in a bunch of ways. One, because everyone's like, oh, it's stealing from artists, or artists, they use the word artists as sort of like a blanket statement, like all artists think or feel this. And I'm like, well, I'm an artist. I create all the time. I've written millions and millions of words. I've posted tons and tons of photos on social media, my website, and I've known for a really long time that my work has trained AI. I mean, just Google search, for example, or all of the different search um, companies search, like Bing or DuckDuckGo, or I don't know what all the different ones are. They all have some basis of AI underneath them, and they have to, because they have to scrape the entire internet. So like if you go to Google and you type in, pictures of Great Pyrenees dogs, they have to scrape the entire internet to find websites and images with pictures of Great Pyrenees dogs. And so that's a AI based in most cases. It has to be, because the internet is just too big for them to like read every single website every time somebody types in a search, right? So anyway, I know that my stuff has been used to train these tools, and it doesn't bother me. I wish that there had been an opt-in, and it would have been great to get micropayments anytime my stuff got pumped into a machine, but that's not the way the world works. So that leaves me with a couple choices. One, I can get angry because they used my work to create a tool that has been hugely beneficial to a lot of people, or I can be proud that my work was used to create a tool that's hugely beneficial. There are AI programs right now that are being used to detect cancer, that are being used to make the world more accessible to people with disabilities. There are AI tools that are being used to save lives and just kind of make things easier and better. Um, there are also AI tools that are being used for nefarious purposes, so to speak, that are being used for bad things. But it's not the AI that's the problem, it's the people that's the problem. It's always been the people who are the problem. Um, anyway, I'm rambling a little bit. my point is that what makes me sad is the division between people and how easy it has become for people to say, I disagree with you on this issue, and therefore I no longer want to have a relationship. And I do think that there are certain issues where that makes sense, where you kind of have to just be like, I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore. But it seems like AI shouldn't be one of those issues. It just seems like one that's so complicated and new. It's so new. Like it seems like it's not new because people have been talking about it so much. But like Midjourney, for example, really just launched a year ago, and like the images that Midjourney created weren't useful um until less than a year ago. Like if you go in and you make a Midjourney image and you use their like original tool, it sucked. Like it was cool, but it sucked. And now the images are really good. They're really good. They're useful. You can use them for all kind of stuff. Are they perfect? No, certainly not. But like the technology is like a year old, at least from a consumer facing perspective. And so people are taking this brand new technology that we barely understand and hardly know how to use. And we haven't had time to run it through the legal system. We haven't had time to um, understand how it works. We haven't had time to create regulation, and government's a mess right now anyway. And we're using that, and people are using that as a way to just divide themselves from everyone else. And it makes me sad. I feel like I've lost friends. I feel like I've lost connections. I know I have. There is a writer I know who was so upset that I wouldn't just completely like blanket hate everything about AI and that I was experimenting with it with myself, that she just sort of vanished, just disappeared, didn't even say goodbye. And that's okay. I mean, I don't expect anybody to stick around if they don't want to stick around, and we all get to set the boundaries that we want to set, and that obviously was a boundary for her. But it makes me sad, um, because people are letting this. It's like impossible to agree to disagree anymore. It feels like you have to agree with other people, or they're just gonna walk away. I remember talking. Now, don't get me wrong. My therapist, I love. I haven't been to see her in a while, but when I was going regularly, she was fantastic and she really helped me with a lot of stuff. But I was telling her an issue I was having with a particular person in my life, and she was like, "That's not okay. This person is like violating your boundaries. I think you should cut off, the relationship with them." And I didn't because I was like, it doesn't feel like the right advice. Like, right? Like, I could see what my therapist was saying. I could see why she was saying it, but it didn't feel right. And so I decided to cut back, but not cut off, and then slowly try to rebuild. And that has been one of the best decisions that I've ever made. Like, it enabled me to protect my own self and to protect my own mental health while also respecting that the other person is a person. And sometimes we need, like, nobody's perfect, right? And we all need time to figure out what we think. We don't just automatically know and understand things. And a lot of times I think there's this pressure to just have an opinion, even when you're uninformed, even when you're faced with an issue that you've never faced before in your whole life. That's one of the things I struggle with sometimes with like advocacy groups and like um, activist sort of social media accounts. It's like, what do you mean you've never heard of this before? And it's like, well, we're all people. We can't know about everything all the time. And this is the same. AI is the same. You know what? I've experimented with AI and I think it's really fun and interesting. I think it's enhanced my creativity. I think it's making me a better writer. Honestly, I think it's making me more creative because it's filling in gaps and allowing me to focus on the things that are important to me. But at some point in the future, depending on how things change, I might decide, I'm really uncomfortable with this and I'm going to quit. But I feel like I can't talk about it. I feel like I can't be open about it. And because if I do, I'm going to get eviscerated. I'm not a big author. Like, it's not like a ton of people know who I am. It's not like I'm like amazingly successful. It's not like my books are like the best books that have ever been written in the history of, American writers or anything. And, those aren't my goals. Sorry, there's a Siamese cat outside. There's two of them. I only see the one. And I was just trying to figure out if either of our cats are outside because sometimes they get into little scraps. Um, it's a really pretty cat though. Anyway, sorry, distracted there for a second. Squirrel, except cat. So anyway, I forgot where I was. Something about oh yeah, we're all people and sometimes we need time to learn things, we need time to explore ideas, we need time to process things. And this idea that we have to have an opinion or that we're somehow less than or we're stupid because we haven't encountered an idea or a philosophy or a history, like the whole thing with Israel right now. I didn't hardly know anything about the history of Israel. It's not something I learned in school. It's not something that I had ever encountered before, really. And I've learned a ton. Josh knows all about it because he has a history major, and so I've learned a ton from him. AI is brand new. It's like crazy to expect people to jump immediately on the bandwagon because somebody else said so, or somebody else got upset about it, or because somebody else framed it as like, the greatest evil in modern history or whatever. So what I've been doing is experimenting with the tools. I don't want to make any like um, final decisions until I know what the tools are and what they can actually do and how they work, because that seems dumb. I've been reading books on artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence isn't a new concept. Historically speaking, I'm going to remember the dates wrong, but I believe it was 1950 was the Dartmouth Convention, when a bunch of scientists and psychologists and engineers and mathematicians got together for 8 weeks, like an 8-week conference. Can't even imagine. And they spent the whole time discussing the possibility of artificial intelligence, how they would build it, what it would look like. And they've been working on it ever since. Maybe not those specific scientists, but um, different people in different capacities have been working on it for a really, really long time. Like, this isn't new. So I've been studying the history and I've been studying like the technology and how it works. One of the things that's super interesting about AI is the philosophy behind it. Like, what could it mean? I recently read one book called The Four Futures, and it sort of looked at how the future could change in different ways, um, depending on like how AI develops and depending on how the climate changes. And so that was super fascinating. Like, it looked at like a world with no work and everybody's all upset about not having jobs. But people aren't upset about jobs. People are upset that they can't eat. So how could we not force people to have to work, but still provide for everybody? I think there's a lot of interesting philosophy and discussions in there. And it frustrates me because nobody gives a shit that I'm putting work in and effort and trying to learn about this crazy complicated thing. Everybody just wants you to agree with them. And if you don't, too bad for you. So that's what I was thinking about today. It made me a little sad because I've already lost a couple of friends this year over this particular issue. And I can imagine that there are more lost relationships to come. So it's hard. It's hard to process, it's hard to understand, and there's like a lot of conversation about grief in the context of people dying, but there's a lot less conversation about grief in the context of lost relationships and lost friends with people who just are gone for whatever reason. And I would like to talk about it more. Maybe not right now, but at some point. Thinking about it and like the idea that we're allowed to experience grief outside of funerals, outside of losing people forever. I think is really important. Like, we're allowed to grieve when things change, and we're allowed to grieve when people move on and when we move on. And so I guess I'm just a little sad today. Um, but I'm making progress on my manuscripts. I got some editing done today. I'm really pleased with some of the changes that I made. So uh, I like the idea of being able to both feel a little bit sad and also be looking ahead to the future and kind of be able to hold some excitement for what is coming down the road at the same time. I'm a person, so that means I can feel multiple things at the same time, even opposite things, and they are valid and they are real. Anyway, I probably should get back to work. I do like this vlogging as a method of procrastination, though. It's fun. But have a good day. I'm gonna have to come up with a sign off, just like I have to come up with an intro of some kind. So, see you later, alligator.